Welcome to the New England Outdoor Life Podcast, where stories, traditions, tips, and tricks come to life by way of those who hunt, fish, guide, trap, and track all over this beautiful region. Join us as we celebrate the outdoor spirit of New England, the New England Outdoor Life Podcast.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to New England Outdoor Life Podcast. It's that time of year where we've suddenly hit the warm belt. I guess I'll say that spring has popped, and we're transitioning from a lot of the winter topics that we've had, from ice fishing to snowmobiling, etc. And a lot of folks are starting to get fishing on the mind, and won't be long we'll have open water, and we're going to really be breaking loose into a lot of fishing-minded topics here in the upcoming weeks ahead of us. Tonight, I've got a good friend who I met many moons ago through the trade show circuits, and has a very fishy brain, as I do, but in a little different outlook in the world. Not so much from the guiding, but want to introduce Sean Snover from Real Northern Bass. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing awesome. We can't thank you enough for joining us. And for anybody that's been following us, we did a little short interview with Sean just down at the New Hampshire Outdoor Expo in Milford, New Hampshire this past weekend. Thank you for everybody that stopped by if you are continuing to follow and listen and with us. But Sean, you had this pipe dream to start bringing the world of bass fishing lovers together, sharing techniques and tactics. So tell us how Real Northern Bass all came around.
So, I mean, truth be told, it never was a dream. It was just a hobby. And really, like, everything started back in 2009. My best friend Chris and I, this was before either one of us had kids yet. And we were, a couple of years out of college. We were playing a ton of video games. We got really big into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 when that came out in, I think, 2008 or 2009. And it was phenomenal. We had a ton of fun with it. We got, like, really good. And we started seeing all the gaming stuff pop up on YouTube. And we're like, just kind of, joking around as we're playing. We're like, oh, it'd be really fun if we did this and we're playing this game mode and stuff. And one thing led to another, and we started a gaming channel that had pipe dreams, and it went exceptionally well for us. And then we just got burnt out on it before too long. We stuck with it for a couple of years. He bailed at the beginning of 2013, and I made it to about the middle of 2014, roughly, before even I couldn't do it anymore. I walked away from a channel that had 52,000 subscribers, had over 10 million views in that time. It was making money hand over fist, and I just didn't care. I was done.
Isn't that something?
It was a really interesting time in my career where I was beyond miserable. And I've had some down points, but this was like next level bad. So my wife came home one day with a GoPro, and she was like, you need to do something. So just take this out, go fishing like you always do, and just do something with this. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what I can talk about. Gaming was a different animal because I knew a lot. And I had learned a lot about fishing, but that was still, really early in my learning curve as far as getting away from the bank, getting away from just Texas rigs and stuff. So I just started with cast to catch videos. And that's all it was. The whole thing about this was to give me a creative outlet. And then as I started to learn more and I had more fun with the editing, I realized, well, you know what? I know a lot about jigs, and nobody really seems to talk. I can't really find any videos on jigs up here in the Northeast. So let me do that. And it was initially just like New Hampshire. Like, I don't see anything specific to New Hampshire. Let's put New Hampshire on the map a little bit with a few things I know between the cast catch, talk about jigs. Then I learned more about like swim jigs and swim baits, talk more about that. And it has been like that pretty much since the beginning, and still is to this day. I have gone at this whole thing, the channel, all the social media and everything, pretty passively. There's been a couple of instances where I realized, oh man, like this is like going really well. Well, I will try and do like this. And I came up with the goal of like, let's see if I can do this. And the video, like, let's see if the video does really well, or, if this year does really well. And it wasn't until really at the very end of 2023 that I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I've been doing this passively since the beginning. Why don't I give it a shot and like see what I can do if I really put some time and effort into it and like have a focus, have a plan other than just flying by the seat of my pants every day.
Sure.
So that didn't work out. Work was insanely busy for me, really, from the end of 2022 until just a couple of months ago. And now, I mean, it's still busy. Don't get me wrong, but I'm no longer doing 2 full-time jobs. That's what I was doing at my job for a little bit. Now I have just a singular role. I have a much more balanced workload. So now I'm looking at 2025, like, okay, let's give it a try.
Sure.
And funny enough, we're almost in the middle of March and I haven't done anything, but I also don't have my boat. We haven't had open water. I have zero interest in ice fishing. So like, I'm not trying to push myself too hard. I know that once I get my boat back and the open water hits, I can go hit open water within an hour and a half of my house now.
Sure.
That itch is going to grow. I've already got a million different ideas. I got a couple of buddies helping me out. So I still wouldn't say it's a dream to make this full time. I have a very lucrative career. I'm, pretty damn happy with what I do. I've done very well for myself because I take a lot of pride in what I do and I enjoy learning and teaching. So that's helped me a lot in my career. But I do have that outlook and perspective this year of like, what if I approached it as if this was the goal? This was the dream. And again, take it seriously. Just don't try and do everything passively. Let's put some planning and some thought into this.
Sure.
So we will see what 2025 brings us. And then who knows, maybe 2026, it does become a dream. Yeah. I don't know. Well, like I said, I have more planning and thought into it now than ever because I didn't have any planning before.
Sure.
So we'll see.
So you pretty much, your platform is weekly live streams where people get to talk about tips and tactics, tournament stuff. What's some of the subject matter you guys go over?
Yeah, and the benefit of the live streams, those started 4 years ago because that was funny enough, the last winter that we had like a real winter where I put my boat away for a couple of months before I realized I could keep doing this all winter down in like Cape Cod, Massachusetts area, fish all those ponds down there. So it was a way just to keep regular content rolling and in a different format where it wasn't like, oh, okay, well, we did this today. We're only going to talk about this. Like I want to be able to talk about anything, even if it's not perfect to this. And it's, so, even if it's something just like kind of loosely fishing related. So that was the whole idea behind the bass fish, the live streams, the Real Northern Bass Live Talk. Be able to talk about anything and everything, but also keep it still very central to everything we've always talked about with bass fishing tips specific to the North, not just the Northeast, because there's so much overlap in our species across the whole northern half. But basically anybody that suffers through a winter like we do, anything I talk about is applicable to those regions. And, it's been fun to be able to do that. But the real meat and potatoes of the channel is the regular uploads. And, this year, again, be different. I got some ideas for much more direct content, but it's always been entertaining and educational, but primarily educational. And I tried to keep it structurally raw is the best way I can put it.
Sure.
My favorite thing about bass fishing is figuring it out.
Yep.
And my favorite phrase about it is it's a chess match. And it's the bass make up the rules and they change the rules every single day.
Amen. But doesn't this dude know that?
Yeah. So, but I live for that. Like my favorite thing is the learning and figuring it out. And I like doing that in a bunch of different places. So though the regular videos kind of follow that path and I try to do the best I can to really show people and let them listen to that progression as we go through the day. Show up on the water more often than not. It's somewhere I haven't been in weeks or for the first time ever. And it's just showing kind of that structurally raw process of how I develop the pattern through the day. And then as I put it together and I find the consistency, then I kind of really break it down in greater detail for a couple minutes and then just show a ton of fish catches to like, for me, I feel it's important to kind of prove like, I said I'm doing this and by the way, here's 20 fish of me doing exactly that.
Sure. So your YouTube channel started before the live streams, correct? So when you started setting up your boat, I remember following you years past when you had one camera on your boat. And then you said the next year, well, I got 3 cameras now. And this is stuff we're trying. So I've watched your progression with it. And you and I have talked about the different realms of looking at what you're doing out there. I'm now taking the steps just so I can kind of document the many different facets that I do in my guide service. But very tough for me to be the boat captain, the equipment guy, the fish cleaner, the videographer, thinking of everything every day that I need to do and try and get it on video and go back home, record it, etc. And I'm going to do that. That's my mission this year. So I totally know what you're going through. But tell us some of the stuff and how many people, or I should say people you've talked to from different regions. How far are you guys reaching now?
As far as like guests that we've had on,
Yeah.
oh man, we've been all over the place. We've had actually just last week we did a swim bait special, and we had throwback baits and sensei swim baits, and one of those, now I'm gonna forget, go figure. One of them was in the Pacific, the upper Midwest, and then the other one was out in Seattle, Washington.
Wild.
So like we have truly gone coast to coast. I've had Oliver Nye, the owner of Big Bass Dreams, Define Fishing, now BWA USA. He's in Southern California, and I've had him on several times. I've had a couple of guests from out in the Midwest. One of my friends, Jake, he's got a very successful channel in like social media. His Instagram and Facebook, TikTok all does better than his YouTube, but the YouTube is still climbing. I've known him since the gaming days, and early on when we met each other and we were gaming together, and all of a sudden became like, we found out that we're both diehard bass anglers too, and he's like huge in the kayak scene. So I've had him on before, and he's out in Illinois. So like we've had people from almost all over the country. I haven't had anybody down towards Texas yet. That part of the country is kind of underrepresented up here, but there's opportunity there in the very near future to have someone like that, and potentially from the very, very top of the professional level, to bring that perspective of like, yeah, I live down south, but I obviously do a lot of fishing up north because of my travels for the tournaments on the elites and everything. And like, it'd be nice to bring that perspective versus, hey, you're a northern guy. How to go down south? It's a totally different animal down there. We haven't done it the other way. You lived down in the south the whole time. What's it like coming up north? So
sure.
Once we get someone from that Texas area, we'll have the whole country pretty well covered.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the tournament stuff, and you and I chatted on the phone prior to start recording tonight. How long have you been involved doing tournament circuits?
Oh boy, since I was a kid. Excuse me. My dad. There used to be an annual tournament on the Nashua River out of Nashua, and it was the Networks event, and that's all I remember about it. I don't remember when they stopped, but it was fun. And my dad and my uncle, the two that are, they brought me up fishing. They're the ones that taught me the basis of what I know. My uncle lived a couple miles from that ramp. He still does. So we go there, and it was just the three of us, and it was basically a big bass event. And like every 2 hours, whoever had the biggest bass in that window got a prize, and then they take the top like 6 or 7 or 8 fish, and those would get individual prizes at the end of the day. And there was one year that I took 6th place with a 3 3/4 pound largemouth. And it was the funniest thing, because at that point, I think I was 11, and I won probably like $500 in Budweiser gear. I got a giant cooler. I got these beer steins. I got T-shirts. It was wild. And then the guy that placed right above me, he ended up getting a small chunk of cash, and I was dumb. He was like, hey, do you want to swap? And obviously I couldn't do anything with it, but I was so excited. I had this pile of free stuff. I was like, no, I want to keep it. My dad was like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, look at all this. That started it. Since then, I did a full club trail back in 2011 when I thought I knew a thing or two, got my teeth kicked in, didn't win any money or even come close. So took a step back, because that was the year before my first child was born. And then I just kind of dabble in tournaments here and there. The last couple of years, I've been much more interested in trying to fish like 2 or 3 big events, because cost-wise, it's more cost-effective for me to do that. I could go fish 10 tournaments in New Hampshire, but that's 10 weekends, and I have to go somewhere specific. That's 10 times I have to go drive an hour plus. That's 10 times at $100+ for the event. That all adds up pretty fast versus if I travel twice for a $300 tournament, I end up saving money in the end. Yeah, it's $600 between the 2 events, but then I'm only paying for gas to drive twice.
Sure.
So, and the upside there is so much higher for the potential financial gain. Not that I've realized it yet, because I have stunk it up in the BFLs that I've done, but I'm learning more from those than I did at that local level. And even the few of the smaller ones that I fished, like I still learn more from failing harder in those bigger events than I have learned from doing well in the smaller events. Sure. So that can continue to be my focus moving forward.
So for the new listener out there that doesn't really know a lot of the basis of the tournament world, what's the difference between Major League Fishing, the elites, BFL, etc.?
I mean, at the highest level, the difficulty to get to the elites is the highest. Like that is the cream of the crop. That
Sure.
is where the majority of anglers are trying to get to. So you have a much bigger pool of extremely skilled anglers that are all trying to climb to the top of that very, very small mountaintop. Right behind that, I would say would be Major League Fishing, and those guys are hammers. So even though I still think the bass elites are at the top, doesn't mean that anybody else is a bunch of slouches, because I know the kind of quality of anglers that are fishing at the highest level at MLF and even one step down from the highest level. And those guys are hammers. There's a reason they're fishing up there at that level, because they earned it. They didn't just stumble their way into it.
Absolutely.
And then it remains to be seen with the what is it, the National Professional Fishing League? Yeah, the NPFL. But I mean, a bunch of the elite guys and the MLF guys are fishing that as well. There's some former Elite Series anglers that are fishing it. There's some guys that are coming up that fish and do very well in like all the Bass Opens and the Toyota Series. Like those are all, some of them aren't quite as big money as the rest, but it's still good money, and the skill level that it draws out is insane. So
yeah, you
to be
look
able
how
to
much
do well
it's changed.
in any of those is nuts.
Yeah, I look back to, say, high school level to me, beginning of college, and you virtually had BASS and FLW, and you look how far the divisions have split up now, and then Major League Fishing came on board with a total new platform, a whole new way of doing tournaments, and really set everybody on their head and said, oh my Lord, you can, with technology today, you've got somebody out there as a scorekeeper, you've got live updates, you aren't taking a fish out of its spot, you don't have to go to a weigh-in. It's crazy stuff. And it just makes you scratch your head, where does the tournament world go to from here? And obviously, as you just said, the money surrounding it and how big recreationally, how big structurally and commercial, what has come around our country. It's got a massive following.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And I'm not really sure where that next step could go with this, other than to see it kind of return to, we'll say it's like tournament glory days in like the 90s and early 2000s, where you had, like FLW had their EverStart series, so EverStart batteries, and you had like AutoZone, and you had Kellogg's, that were all these big, brand name sponsors that were throwing a ton of dollars into it. That's very slowly, I feel like, starting to trickle back in, where a lot more of that sponsor money is starting to benefit the sport as a whole. But now we're so split up between all these major events and then all the sub events at behind those major events. It's no longer just like Bass and FLW, right? Like you had that, and then you had like one tournament series below that, and like that was kind of it that was getting sponsor dollars. Bass now has the elites, and it's got all the opens, and then the elite, the EQs, the elite qualifiers. And, even some of that money makes their way to the college side too, because the college professional fishing scene is insanely huge.
It
and
sure
you got, now you got the NPFL, and that's pretty much it on that level. But then you got Major League Fishing that's got, the Bass Pro Tour. And then I can't remember the one below that. But then the next step down, like they're semi-pro, but still a professional league. And the Toyota Series, which is a huge draw and draws a lot. And then below that, the BFLs, which are single day events, but those have a ton. And then you have like the American Bass Anglers. They're, I believe, national, but especially in the Northeast, like their New York division draws a ton of boats, and they've got like 3 major tours on that. So, that's not gaining a ton of sponsorship dollars, but it's eating some of it.
Sure it is.
So trying to see that monetary growth, it's there, but now it's just so much more spread out than it ever used to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that every fisherman out there, whether you're recreational, you're commercial, you're into tournament angling, everybody's got their own different views. And I always chuckle and watching social media, and a group of guys will come on and say, okay, what's the local tournament schedule? And I always have got an interesting look at things. And me as a guide, I strongly try to encourage my clients to do weekdays over weekends, just because of pure traffic on any body of water.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But as soon as I show up at a ramp on a Saturday and there's 25 bass boats, I'm like, doggone it, I'm going to struggle to find a spot that doesn't have a bass boat on it today,
Oh, yeah.
So it's, and it's not always that way. And as you know, even on a lake the size of Champlain, there's different ports and different places where they're going to have events, but it's becoming so popular. The club events, the regional events, I will lying if I know the exact numbers, but there's over 60 registered tournaments on Champlain alone every year of different levels, So it does affect the economy and obviously fuels everything from sporting goods shops to lodging, all the fuel and products that go around the boating world. And obviously the boat shops that get to fix an outdrive or a prop here and there too. So, but it is. And obviously it was so interesting for me as a guide when I first got my charter captain's license and I thought about trout and salmon. I did it in Lake Ontario and obviously grew up doing it around here as a troller. But the bass world really put Champlain on the map. And about 20 years ago, you started seeing, oh, you fish on Champlain? Well, yeah, I've caught trout and salmon and pike there since I could crawl. But bass fishing was bass fishing. I just did it with my buds or did it in a local pond. I didn't think anything of it. But then from a guide standpoint, started thinking about how do I blend different things. And as you said, no different than the tournaments, I was hauling all my equipment, my camper, everything out to Lake Ontario to fight against Lord 300 to 600 licensed charter captains on Lake Ontario. And a tenth of that pressure from a guide standpoint on my lake. So I totally changed around my business plan about 5 years ago. And that was also after, as you and I know, meeting a great friend of ours and Dave Morissette, who, I won't lie, has taught me a ton about as being a bass guy. And I'm very confident that most days I can put fish in with people. And as you know, as a tournament angler, just because you can go out and catch a fish doesn't mean that the clients on the boat can catch those fish. And whatever the rod and or lure or tactic you're putting in front of them, how quickly they can pick it up, especially with the advent of finessing stuff in the last 3 or 4 years. And I can remember watching the tournament and watching talk about using the Nico rig. And I said, you know what? I just listened to Takahiro, his pronunciation, how he set up a Nico rig. But I said, I'm going to try it. And it hammered. I was already Ned rigging and trying other stuff. And I said, Dave, you ever do any Nico rigging? He goes, why would I do that? I'm like, dude, give it a run. I was killing it, especially on small finesse worms. And it's as a guide technique, it's pretty simple, easy, not much different than wacky rigging. Okay, person, chuck that worm over there at that dock or that stump or whatever, just let it slowly fall. So, you pick up those things, and I use your channel, other channels out there. I follow that stuff more now because I'm picking the brain, just like you said, learning from everybody else, trying little things. I will tune in on a weekend and there's a tournament going on just because I want to see who's in the money, but I don't usually pick up much as far as tips and tactics out of those guys, so.
He hasn't asked me a lot of questions yet.
Andy, what would you do on this particular day?
Throw something out there and hope.
Well, we have those days too that sometimes you dig into the bottom of the tackle box. Well, I got to find something that's going to work today.
Mm-hmm. Throw the kitchen sink in a Hail Mary and you still go home with nothing.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you, it was just, I think last year on LCI weekend, which is the big tournament that all the locals, when I say locals, we got people from all up and down the East Coast that come up for the annual LCI Derby on Champlain. Of course, it is probably the biggest all species derby in the country. It's just, you can win a prize for catching a drum to a guard or perch or whatever. And I always make it a family weekend. I used to charter on that weekend, but now it's saved for my dad, my brothers, my nephew, and my son. And we had a blow off on Saturday this year. And for most people, unless you were out in a 28 plus. And I said to the guys, well, we're not going to lose the day. Let's go to an inland lake. And just for grins. And even on this inland lake, we had 2.5 footers out there. And we murdered it. It was a great day to throw spinner baits and big paddle tails. And caught some of the biggest largies I've ever caught this lake. And so just when you think a day, let's say, we're just going to get on the water so the boys can go out and have a couple beers and do something, we had an incredible day of fishing. So you just never know.
Dude, when the wind's ripping, like, I'm at my happiest.
Yeah.
I have I would say the majority of my best days for number of big bass, whether it be smallmouth or largemouth, have been on the days where I'm not doing anything with the boat. I am just holding on for dear life and I'm burning a swim bait or a spinner bait.
Yeah.
And just hammering them. One of my favorite memories, we've done it so many times now, it's not even funny. But This is before even my buddy Andrew had jumped in with me. This is when I used to fish with my buddy Josh all the time. And we went up on Newfound, and I knew it was going to get rowdy, but it ended up being a little bit rowdier than we thought. It was supposed to be like 10 to 15 sustained with gusts up to 25 out of the northwest. So cutting right down that lake. And it ended up being like 20 to 25 with gusts up to 35. And it was just like I motored over, rode the trough all the way over, and I just leaned against the butt seat, and all I did with the troll motor was just kind of keep the direction of the bow, so we were heading in line. I think we caught like 80 smallmouth, and we had like 7 or 8 over 4 pounds. Which back then, when I did that, that was like I had never even come close to doing something like that, and that was one of the first times like big water. I was like, this is dangerous, but man, that was worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know how well you work with the Beast Coast guys. And that was a particular day. I won't lie. When it comes to paddle tails, I've thrown Kitech since the sky's been falling, you know. But that day I said, I'm going to really throw some Beast Coast stuff today. And man, did they shine. And that bigger profile, that bigger tail had more vibration. And my brother exclusively was throwing those baits, and he was chucking them a country mile. And as you said, just burning them. And he, boom, you know, like 3 times in a row in an hour, we had a 4-pounder launching out of the water. And that was a hot bait that day, you know. So again, I'm just trying to decide what baits am I going to mix into my repertoire, and know that I can teach a client pretty quickly, and work this bait this way on this type of conditions today. So
Yeah.
certainly puts a much different spin into it. So you talked a little bit about your regular full-time career, which you also kind of work in the fishing business, and for this corporation, for a lot of us boat guys out there, know of Airmar. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm coming up really quick on my 3-year anniversary here. The Airmar, knowing it was a fishing company, which I didn't know that for a very long time. It wasn't until, maybe 7 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that a mutual friend of, between me and my buddy Josh, he had a friend. And I'd known him from always going down to the skate park. He was a skateboarder, I was a BMXer, but it didn't matter. We all intermingled and rode together, and he was a good dude. And my buddy Josh, he works at Airmar. I'm like, okay, cool. What does that mean? He's like, they make transducers. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. And I immediately went home and looked him up, and I was like, I'm going to try and work there one day. My opportunity came up 3 years ago. They were hiring for an account manager, sales account manager. And I was like, this is as close as I've seen yet. I'm going to give it a shot. So I retooled my resume, grabbed all my relevant experience, threw it in there. And for the first time in my professional career, I wrote a cover letter. And I explained everything about me. And I had been not really public about the channel, because when we started the gaming channel, companies didn't want to hear about that. They didn't want to know you were active like that online and doing anything like YouTube wise like that. They were like, oh, that's bad. And the only time it was a cool conversation is when we mentioned that we were making money. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, you do YouTube too? Whoa, you make money on YouTube?
Yeah.
It's a totally different dynamic. And now thankfully in the last 5 years, it's really changed. So I was like, screw it, throw caution to the wind. Here's my cover letter. This is everything I do online. My whole backstory about fishing. I get a call the next day, and they're like, we'd love to have you come in. And I was able to get in a position that I, truth be told, was insanely overqualified for. Given my background, I've been a mechanical engineer the vast majority of my career. I was a mechanical engineering manager for 3 years. I've been in project management. I've been a business development manager. So I had a lot of extensive experience that helped, but was way overkill for this role. But didn't matter. It got me in. And I had been doing that up until September of last year, and finally got a promotion to project manager as we started to grow, and we had that opportunity where they could see the need for it sooner than later. I had constantly said, hey, any next opportunity comes up that more aligns with my skill sets and experience, let's go there, please. And my boss, she's awesome, and she got me in on that. We were able to make it work out. It took a long time to get to that position, but regardless, anyway, I'm a project manager over there now, and things have been very awesome. I've learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot about transducers, so I started here, and then I learned a lot more about the technology behind it that I never even considered. I know more about ceramics and just electronics in general than I ever have in my career, which is good, because just like fishing in my career, I have to be learning.
Sure.
Not just for the sake of continuously. That continuous professional growth, and I'm always aspiring to be greater than I was the day before, and I want to continue to move up. but I'm addicted to learning. So like if I'm not learning, I'm miserable. And I get bored really, really easily. So I need constant mental engagement to keep me going and keep me interested, keep me engaged in the business I'm in. There's been no shortage of opportunity for me to learn here, which is great. This is why, I've been here almost 3 years. I've bounced around a lot in my career, but this is now my second longest tenure that I'd been in my career at this point, and I don't see it ending anytime soon.
Cool. Well, you kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit last fall about a new trinket that was coming out, and obviously told me a lot more about it, and happened to get a phone call. Thank you very much for your passing it on. For all of my trolling world buddies out there that know about downriggers, Scotty, Cannon, and Big John are the top 3 runners, if you will. And you've had a chance to work on a product design system with Scotty. So tell us a bit about that.
So the Scotty Seeker powered by Airmar is the official name on this. This is an idea that came up. I'm not sure how much I can say. Let's say relatively early into my career. And granted, I have zero experience in downrigger fishing or prior to it when this really got started and I got roped in on it. And especially those target species. But I would say that I am probably the most knowledgeable angler at the facilities here, that at the site that I'm at. There might be 1 or 2 other guys that know a little bit more about me. I'm not sure, but I would say if I don't know the most, I'm definitely inside the top 3. And then even globally amongst all of our locations, I'd be willing to bet some considerable money that I'm in the top 5 for the most knowledgeable, as far as just understanding everything there is to know about being on the water and all the reasons why you do X, Y, and Z when you're targeting a species. And just because I do that for bass doesn't mean that a lot of that information and that method to the madness isn't still relevant to downrigger fishing and stuff. A lot of it has to do with why you choose to target different depths and the water temperature you're chasing and everything. It's just a different species and a slightly different depth and a slightly different water temp than I would do. But the methodology is still similar. So
you got it.
That's how I got involved, because of obviously my mechanical engineering background. Everything I've done in my career has been specifically in new product design and development. So, literally everything I did was taking a napkin sketch and bring it all the way through to hand off into production for parts that went anywhere from 50 parts a year to 50,000 parts a year. So my professional experience has really truly run the gambit, and I have been responsible for the entirety of the mechanical design, all of the drawings, working with supply chain to get all of materials procured, working with shop inside or external vendors to get parts actually made, doing injection molded type parts. I've done it all. And then I've also done that as an engineering manager. I've done that as a project manager. So I was ideally suited to be brought on this because of that extensive background, plus my love for fishing.
Sure.
That's how I got into it. And that was honestly still my favorite thing I've done in my career to this point. It was really awesome to be part of that. And my official title on it was the product owner, which I still retain. Now I forget. I've picked up a third title, but I was the product owner. So I had a lot to do with having final say on final design decisions on this, as far as what the performance specifications had to be. Being that liaison between, my company Airmar and the end customer for what we were doing. And I ended up getting roped into a lot of the project management side of things out of necessity. And I won't say more than on that, but just, it was not ideal.
Sure.
But I'm happy to do it. And I wore a lot of hats on that project. And to this day, I still do. I am the primary point of contact for any customer service that comes in, especially directly through Scotty, who is really the people that are selling this directly. And it has been a really cool project, and it was good to get back to it after not being in the design side of things in my career for really at that point for 5 years. Pretty close. No, there was a short stint. I did a lot of not design work. Then I had 6 months where I got back into design work at the beginning of 2020. Only lasted 7 months, and then that company almost folded. So I was part of the first round of layoffs when COVID took out damn near everything.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, well, that was fun. I'm going back to not being a designer. Go back to sales. So I don't know. It all worked out well for me and served me well in the end. And that Seeker product is phenomenal, especially seeing how it stacks up to the competition.
Sure.
And everything we can do with it. And other things I can't talk about yet.
Well, I can, because it is out there. There are some YouTube videos on it already, and they're obviously out there marketing it now. I can give a little bit of my spin as a trolling guide and captain. There's been, as I told one of your reps from Scotty, obviously a ton of competition has attempted different things in the speed and temp world. So especially for the freshwater trout and salmon fishermen, temperature is everything until you get to spawn time, especially with the Pacific salmon species. Temp kind of goes out the world. But speed is obviously critical with lure presentation. And when you start adding in current, especially in the Great Lakes, you definitely get current changes at different depths. It's very critical for the captain or the fisherman to know where they expect those lures to be. So over the years, different companies such as Subtroll, Depth Raider, Fishhawk have adjusted their technology or changed with new technology. But finding a unit that is dependable, that sends a good, strong signal up to the transducer for the boat to read up on the top side. Really, I've tested every one of them on the market, and a lot of them had a coded cable system that if it got a fray in it, you lost signal. So you had to take a wet rag and keep it wet because if it dried out, it would lose signal, you name it. And I've used Fishhawk extensively, and Fishhawk 2 has added some things. I can remember the first Fishhawk I ever had with the old 840 head. It would burn through batteries horribly. I'd change my 9-volt every other trip. And when they came up with the X4 system, battery life changed immensely. I was going through maybe 4 AA's once a month, if not twice a summer, all depending on how many trolling trips I was doing. Back then, I was doing pretty much 90% of my trips were trolling between Lake Champlain and Lake Ontario. So the challenge has always been for the trolling person wants to know where temp and speed is at different levels. So knowing that in the Great Lakes, many of those species have their own comfort zone. In the heat of the summer, pre-spawn, king salmon are very comfortable, 47 to 50 degrees. There's a sweet spot that a lot of them will say 48 is it. Steelhead like to be up in the mid-50s. Browns even warmer, 58 to 60. So to stagger different programs is pretty critical, knowing where thermocline changes, where your riggers are at. How do you adjust for blowback, which is a term that the trollers know based on how much cable length you've got out will dictate how far back that lure is swinging out of your program. So you virtually had to have 2 separate companies on the boat because none of them offered a way to run multiple probes at a time. And you guys just designed that. You can run up to 4 probes at a time. You have a probe that is streamlined, that's shaped like a downrigger weight, like the shark weight. So it's going to, slide through the water without those blowback issues. And oh, by the way, it's got technology that you can read off a phone, off a tablet. Multiple spots are on the boat. It's funny, as I have made a big change in my career and have just taken a deposit on my trolling boat. My trolling life is coming because of how I'm running my business has changed up. But I can promise you, for a lot of my brethren out in Lake Ontario, it's going to be a game changer, hands down. It's going to give you information so instantaneously. And you guys have produced it to using saltwater techniques as well. So kudos to you. I can't wait to hear feedback on it and talk to my buddies that are going to be running it. It's going to be something else.
I think my favorite thing about what we were able to do with this, I mean, it's really like the 4 biggest selling features about this is the speeds that they were able to figure out how to get done. I will not say because I had nothing to do with that aspect of this, but, being part of the design process and understanding, the challenges they went through to figure out how to make that work, but the speed of the data transmission. Channel 1, you get depth and temperature every half a second and then speed every 5 seconds. Like, that's huge. That is insanely faster than anything else in the market. With that, we also have the thermocline mode on channel 1. So when you're using it on your phone and you're seeing your depth, speed, temperature on it, you take that, swipe it up, and right there, it will draw your thermocline for you on the graph, which is just, for a bass guy, for me, like when we first brought that up, I'm like, yeah, you need that. Like, I don't care what kind of fish you go for. Yes, make that happen. Everybody will love that. That's huge to know where that is.
Sure.
And now, since then, I've been like, how do I get this on my boat?
Yeah.
So I can utilize that as well.
Sure.
having that's huge. Obviously, being able to use 4 probes simultaneously with no issues whatsoever, and incredibly easy to set it all up. That's huge. And then, last but not least is our integration into the multifunction displays from most of the major OEMs, with more work on that currently happening, is huge. We've proven it works on everybody. And it's just like literally plug it and turn it on, and voila, you have that on your MFD. So if you're, like you had mentioned earlier, you've got an extra MFD on the back of the boat because that's where you're doing all that work. You've got one back there. You don't need to use your phone. You can just throw it up there, and you can have one or all 4 probe data showing up simultaneously. It doesn't matter, if you split it so you have 4 screen elements on there, then you can only see up to 2 probes at a time. But if you got split horizontally, all your, Scotty Seeger at the top, and then I don't know, maybe you got map and sonar and then like down imaging there, you can see all 4 probes, all that data at the same exact time, and it's all real time right there. And like, it's glorious. That integration is a different level of ease of use for customers.
Yeah, it's I can tell you days that I know I'm trolling in one direction out there on Lake Ontario. The bite is phenomenal, and you keep trolling it for miles because as soon as you turn, you're going back into that current change and you're going to lose the bite. But now you can say, okay, I can adjust with blowback to get the temperature, to get the speed, because that current has changed it. You can figure that out, and it's such a game changer. And being able to have all that put together, and I'm sure without letting the cat out of the bag, there's probably going to be other tools coming with that the long line guy, the Dipsy guy, Coppers and stuff can do the same thing. So, it's so imperative, and obviously being able to improve your catch. Say nothing about the guys that are in the tournament world, in the trolling business out there. It's going to make them some money. So, yeah, it's something else to behold. I'm hoping that I can add it to my boat, even though I only have 2 downriggers on my Lund now, just to see it work. Just to have something that can totally change the game of how you're looking at what things are going on underwater, and it's imperative to how we view things. But cool stuff, my man. That's got to be something to be proud of, and what you guys have built.
Extremely.
Yep, very cool. Earlier tonight, we had also, as we're on the topic of technology right now, in the last 2 to 3 years, some huge game changers when we start looking at sonar, how it reads stuff, the techniques that go with using what you're reading on those MFDs, and then obviously how it's changed the tournament world. And for those of us that talk about FFS, and for those that don't know what that means, forward-facing sonar, you can crinkle some feathers fast and probably talk all night long on the pros and cons. So what's your feedback and what the world is feeling right now? I've watched your videos using it, so I know doggone well what you think of it as from from a fishing technique. But what's the tournament world thinking of it?
It's extremely divisive, and the biggest problem is that a lot of these, very emphatic opinions on the matter are coming from people that are speaking from a complete lack of experience, and they're speaking from the optics of what they first saw from it when it came out and was used extensively at the professional level. Now, I feel like I said that very well because I've given that a lot of thought, because I see it. You can't avoid it. And I make it a point to read it all the time. I have done a very good job in the last few years of my life of staying away from just any toxic negativity. And unfortunately, with forward-facing sonar, there's a lot of that. But in this case, I read it all because I want to truly understand what people are saying behind that. I don't particularly care about these people or their opinion, but I want to understand, where's the commonality that's driving, such negativity towards forward-facing sonar. And a lot of it, again, it comes from ignorance on a lot of these people's parts. They don't understand that it's not an automatic fish catching machine. Where they think it is comes from what they've seen from it at the professional level when it was the first 2 years when it really came out. And because Forward-facing sonar eliminated the last part of the lake that nobody could efficiently and consistently tackle. That was the middle of the lake. All those pelagic smallmouth and largemouth that just live out in the middle of nothing, and they do nothing but swim and eat schools of bait fish and just roam from the friggin' whenever they first went out there until the day they die. That's all those fish do. And trying to target those prior to forward-facing sonar was just pure luck, in my opinion. You go out there and spend a lot of time and minimize how much luck was necessary, but really, it was still really difficult to do that, especially in deeper water bodies of water. Like side imaging, yeah, you can see fish suspended, but it's a lot harder when you're doing it on like a place like Champlain, where a lot of those fish can be swimming over 60 to 80 or even 100 feet of water, especially getting the New York side. They could be over hundreds of feet of water. Mike Iaconelli said it best. There's parts of Champlain on that New York side during that deep trench. There's got to be tens of thousands of smallmouth that have never even seen a lure.
Sure.
Because they just live in an area that nobody will ever even think to target. And they live at depths that nobody would ever think to target until forward-facing sonar came along. So all those fish that have been unpressured for this entire time, all of a sudden we're seeing like bait presented to them extremely efficiently. And I know a lot of people go back and forth like, bass only have a pea-sized brain. They're not that smart. They're smarter than we give them credit for. If they weren't that smart, everybody would be with a damn hammer out there. But that's not the case. And these fish were conditioned to being left alone and just roam and, school bait fish. Yep, I'll go eat. And all of a sudden it was school bait fish. Oh, look at that bait fish is coming right to my mouth. And those were easy pickings at first. So yeah, when it first came out, it made it look way easier than it is now because you were targeting so many fish that were completely unpressured. Well, now everybody and their brother and mother and father and nephew and second cousin has forward-facing sonar, and they've been all hammering those same fish or trying to out offshore that otherwise, went from seeing literally no pressure to seeing pressure almost every single day for the last 4 or 5 years. And now the real reality of that is those fish are not as easy to catch as people think it is.
Sure, they're getting educated.
I still get comments like that from guys that don't use it. They've gone out and used it like once or twice, or maybe they used it a dozen times 3 years ago. And that's the basis of their opinion. And that's where the ignorance comes in on it. And it used to be frustrating for me, but with understanding comes acceptance. And I just accept that some people want to have such a strong and emphatic opinion on something that they really don't care to put any more understanding in because they already drew their assumptions and conclusions from a very small sample size from years ago. And that's good enough for them to say that they're educated on the topic as it is. And, the problem is that so much of what we're seeing now with decisions drawing it are coming from those people that have barely used it, that they saw it at its height of effectiveness. And they don't understand that now it's not like that.
Sure.
And
it's just one more tool in the toolbox.
Right. And I know that I'm not the best with it, but I'm pretty damn good. I know guys that are just stupid good with it, like dangerously good with it. And even they are going out there and they will see 200 fish and they get 20 of them.
Sure.
It's a 10% catch rate. Last I checked, a 10% catch rate is not something I would consider. Fish are just jumping in the boat and I just, hook whatever I see.
Sure.
That's abysmal. Like, 1 out of every 10 fish that you see, you get to potentially at least hook into, but you might not even always land. Like, that's not that automatic. And really, I don't even think it's that good. I feel like now, if you're hooking up on 10% or even knocking on the door of 10% of the fish you see, that's phenomenal. Sure. I think the reality is more like less than 5%.
I'll tell you, when it first came out, 2 or 3 of my captain buddies had it out on Lake Ontario, and everybody thinks about it just because of its term, forward facing. It's going to be on the bow mount of a boat. And we had guys that were mounting on the stern of a trolling boat. So now it's forward facing, is rear off the boat. It's looking at your downriggers. And you can see all 3 downriggers. And you, by the way, can see a fish come out of your pattern and then come into the pattern, whether it's going to look at a rigger or not. And now you can adjust the rigger to be able to see, can I get that bait to go where that fish wants to go? And it is a game changer. There's no question about it. That it's another version that you can use it for.
Right. But that's where it matters. And that's the thing that a lot of people are missing is that, so-and-so is only doing well because of that, of forward-facing sonar. And this guy never would have had a chance if not for forward-facing sonar. No, it's just another tool. And all those pros were doing phenomenal before it came along. We're still doing phenomenal when it came along, and are now still doing phenomenal after it's been greatly restricted, because they understand that it's just another tool in the toolbox. And like any other tool, you have to understand how to learn it, and you need to have already put in the time on the water to understand what you're seeing.
Absolutely.
Just because you can see that fish doesn't mean shit at the end of the day.
Yep.
You know, you could go give me the most expensive golf club set in the world, and I'm a terrible golfer, but I love it. And I shoot usually around like 105 to 110, right? That's an abysmal score, but I don't care. I do just well enough to have fun for the limited bit of golfing that I do. And I know I'm going to lose, probably 6 or 7 balls out in the woods. I don't care. It's fun. You go out and give me $100,000 golf set. Am I going to start shooting 70? No. And I know it's a little bit different in the sense like that's a physical tool, but the point still stands. Just because you put this incredibly expensive piece of technology in the hands of someone, if you don't already have the understanding to know what it is you're looking at and understand what is happening and then how to make those adjustments, only experience is going to teach you that. And you have to have that experience to maximize a tool that is as powerful as that.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. By far the most powerful tool in the market, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And you hit that right on the nail head in that topic as a guide. And I get people asking me every year, if you updated to forward facing sonar, and I have not yet. And I'm not saying I'm not good. I'm kind of on the cusp, but there's 2 totally different reasons. Number one, I can see for the tournament guy, who's the only person on the boat, he's watching that screen and knowing exactly how to target that bait and what they're wanting to do it. What you just brought up is the true point. As a guide, I've got to teach every client that comes out there to watch what's going on the screen. And I don't want it to become video game fishing. I like, being able to teach clients, depending on the species we're targeting, throwing different baits. Is it a, quote, again, another tool in the toolbox? Absolutely. But, for instance, lake trout jigging. For a lot of the recreational guys or lake trout jigging, there's only 1 or 2 of them on the boat. Fantastic. Yeah, they're going to up their catch rate. When I've got 4 to 6 clients on the boat, they can't all watch the same screen. So I'm not going to have 5 of those screens around the boat. And for those that don't know it, they're not cheap. These systems are coming down in price a little bit, but it's still the high end of any sonar systems out there. So many of my brethren in the guiding world have said, where do you look at the pros and cons of putting that kind of money on the boat? How many screens do you put on the boat where they're arranged in different places people can sit and watch them? So that's my pro and con. How do I evaluate it? I'm looking at it that if I buy it, it'll add that extra couple of fish, or on the days I'm struggling, I can say, okay, I can see those fish are neutral down there. We got to try a different presentation. But again, it comes down to the dollars and cents and the investment. That's all.
Well, I bet too, if you went back to the good old days of just fish finders, I bet the same sorts of people were making the same sorts of complaints when they came out. And it's still like what you're saying is the same with that, because now with some experience, last year was the first year I had access to a boat, got a beautiful fish finder. No idea how to use the thing, but it looks amazing. So it's like this whole process of like the whole year. What in the world am I even looking at? What am I looking for? It's not like you get one and all of a sudden you're catching more fish. I'm still learning the thing a year later. So I can't imagine it's probably just the process of any new technology coming out that people are just going to complain until they're not.
Yeah. No, and you're right on that. And I think a lot of people too have forgotten the impact that side imaging has had, right? Because before you had to drive over the top of something to find it. So especially all those guys down south that had their brush piles everywhere, they go out in the middle of the night and dump them somewhere so nobody else could find them. And all of a sudden, man, everybody was belly aching when side imaging came out and it was cheap and it was good. There was no more secrets. Side imaging, I think, was probably the most kind of exposing technology that came to the freshwater fishing world. Because again, like it not only did it like dramatically increase your efficiency on the water for breaking down what's out there, but again, it removed all secrets. That tree you've been fishing for the last 3 decades and only you knew about because maybe your buddy put it out there. Yeah, no, everybody knows about that tree now and everybody fishes it. So unless you're constantly going out and dumping new, just hard structure out there, there's no secrets. Side imaging ruined that. And I say ruined it. That's not really an accurate way to put it, even though it is. It's not an appropriate way to put it. But side imaging has eliminated any and all secrets you could ever have on any body of water.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now you add the updates with mapping, and between Navionics and DepthMaster, what you can pinpoint a little rock pile at 1.5 feet, where years ago you might say, well, I know there's a hump out there somewheres. And being able to run right to that structure. Okay, now I'm going to put the forward-facing sonar down there. I can look that structure over. Is there fish on it or not? You just expedited the choice. We're going to stay and play, or nope, let's go to the next one. So, yeah, every bit of it is game-changing for sure.
My favorite thing, just to on topic but digress a little bit, was when I got side imaging for the first time was only in 2018. So like really, like I am very, very late to the game on a lot of things in the bass fishing world. And prior to that, there's one particular pond not too far from me that I grew up on. I'm 40. My family moved us from Andover, Mass, up to Milford, New Hampshire when I was 8 in October of '93, and I've been here ever since. That first spring in April of '94, my dad took me to this pond, and we've been going probably 10 times a year at minimum every year since 1994. There's one particular stretch where I found a big boulder when I was younger. And then the next year I found another boulder not too far from it. And so on for years. Then there's one year I went out, water was down probably like 2 feet, really bad drought, and got my first pair of polarized sunglasses. Now I'm going down. I'm like, whoa. It is bluebird skies, dead calm, water's gin clear, and it's low. Like, there wasn't just 2 or 3 boulders here all along. There's like 50 of them. This is wild. So then I go out that next year, it's a couple of years after that, and I get my first graph that had not only GPS, but also side imaging. What took me 25 to 30 years to really understand like what was out there. Well, actually, no, at this point, this would have been 2018 from 94 is what's quick math is a little over 24 years, 26 years, something like that. 24 years. 24 years to understand what I thought was everything that this stretch of shoreline had to offer. It was about 700, 800 feet long. I found everything and things I never knew that were there in less than 5 minutes. Replicated everything, and I waypointed everything in less than 5 minutes. It's like, whoa. Okay, now I truly understand why people were spending so much money to put this stuff on their boat, because that was like the end all be all definition of like, is this really going to help me? And then one pass, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell was I doing before?
Yep. And the other tough part is, everybody has a financial level that they're willing to spend, the recreational angler, the guide, the tournament guy. And it makes it that one more step challenge that you got to push to get sponsors. If you're in the tournament world, you got to step it up. And because if you don't have this technology, the guy that does is going to smoke you. No two ways about it. So being able to put $100,000 bass rig together is a priority if you think you're going to be winning money in the tournament trails out there, and it's looking at, the pros and cons, as you said. What is that person's ability to catch fish, produce money? Is it their full-time job? Is it a hobby? What's the depth of the stress you want to put with it too? There's quite a bit to it for sure.
Oh yeah. And, for me, I'm still very much a hobbyist at this. I'm not trying to go pro. Would I like to? The idea is exciting. When I look at the financials of it, I'm like, man, to go take a pay cut and not have health insurance for my family, not just me. I don't give a shit about me.
You got it.
I care about my family. Not to have health insurance for my kids, and then like to just like I don't know. That is a risk to do something I would love, absolutely. But there's a reason why most of the new guys you see get on there, they're young.
Yep.
They have no obligations. They have no responsibilities. They have nothing to tie them down. They have all the potential to take all the risk to not have to worry about anybody but themselves.
You got it.
If it wasn't as such a financial risk at the very beginning, I think you would start to see a lot more 30s and 40s, maybe even some 50-year-old guys all of a sudden make it at the elites every once in a while. But not everybody is willing to take that gamble and step away from that, career with the health benefits and everything to take care of their family, and gamble on all of that. There's a part of me that's like, man, I'd like to go give it a shot, but love my family too much to try and put them through that kind of misery.
Oh, man. I totally get that. For anybody listening, I apologize. I'm on the tail end of a cold and the tickle still comes around. So Andy will have his hands full trying to edit everything out after we're all done here. But par for the course. So what's new in the game plan for Real Northern Bass? Any topics that you want to tell listeners to expect coming down the road or plans for it?
Yeah, actually. So the date you post this will be the next Real Northern Bass Talk live stream. We do it every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. That will be the New Hampshire Bass Nation Kayak Series. Gonna have 3 of the people coming on there, 1 tournament director and 2 anglers. 2 of them I know very, very well. The third guy I've met a couple of times. He'd be the tournament director, and just kind of try and help promote that, because I got to back this up a little bit. I am the worst self-promoter. I don't ever think I'm doing well at anything, because I am the worst person you have ever seen that doesn't look back in the sense of like how far I've come. I only see the next challenge I am constantly placing in front of myself. I only see how high I've raised the bar. So I'm trying to get better at understanding really what everything that I do means. And what the hell does that have to do with anything we were just talking about with Bass Nation Kayak? I'm really starting to listen and acknowledge and recognize from the people telling me what you're doing is great, and you are doing something that has reach and people appreciate it. You're helping. And with better understanding on that and acknowledging it and embracing it on my end, I am now taking the opportunity to try and help more people with what I've done. I love what I do. I love doing this. And if I can use it, and the growth that I have kind of created from everything to try and help bring other people up with me, then dude, I am all about it. Cause I am not the type of person that's like, oh, you want to do a YouTube channel and a podcast too? I don't want anything to do with you, because that's what I do. Nope, dude. We're all coming up together. And that's just how I've been since I was a little kid, especially riding BMX. And I did a fair few competitions when I was younger, but I was terrible at it. But man, there was only like 99% of the people that I met doing that, even though in times when we were all directly competing with one another, it wasn't competing against one another. We were all competing together, and everybody was always hyping everybody else up. Guy could have landed just something absolutely nuts, right? And then another guy comes up and he's trying to match or go better. And that guy that now has the highest score that just went on an absolute banger of a run is cheering just as loudly as everybody else is for the guy that's trying to beat him. That's my upbringing, and that's who I am. And I love that. And I wish there was more of that. So I'm going to take this opportunity to, like, I have nothing to do with kayak angling. That's fine. I have an opportunity to help these guys grow their trails. That's why I'm doing this. So that's next week. After that, we've got a couple of things in the works that I'm hesitant to talk about because I don't want to overhype and under deliver. Yeah. But there is a very strong likelihood of a couple of really significant guests coming up here very soon, which would be awesome. It's always nice to have different levels of, perspective and experience to be able to speak on specific topics. I have never really been opposed to having professionals on with what I do. But I have enjoyed the challenge of trying to grow from the knowledge that I have gained and my ability to be able to explain that in ways that, hopefully, ideally, anybody can understand and not have to, and this is going to sound terrible, not have to potentially, kind of quote unquote, lean on an actual professional and their name to get people to come in hey, check out me too, by the way, by proxy. I want to try and do it on my own, but I'm not going to say no to some names. Dude, if I could get Polinick on, I'd pass out. Sure. And I asked him when I met him at ICAST in 2023, and he said yes. And I was over the moon happy. And I reached out and I got ghosted, unfortunately. Him and G-Man, they both said yes, and then I never heard back from them. I would still have them both on in a heartbeat. Those are two dudes I live up. I really look up to. I would kill to have Zona on. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah. Is this your way of not saying you're going to have Matt on soon?
Yeah, well,
I try and get everybody on.
I've looked at it that we're going to cover as many branches of the outdoor subject matter to cover as many topics as we can. And you're right. We all have our heroes in whatever sport or avenue. And in the bass world, Seth Fighter is the guy for me. If I get a chance to have him on someday, he's just the ultimate dude. Not only is he a wicked stick, but I just love his demeanor. I love his attitude, his just free for all, have fun while you're out there. He's the type of guy that, I think that a lot of kids could idolize and say, he's just out there living the way he grew up and catching fish and living the lifestyle, so.
Yep. He's another guy I would love to have.
When you hear free for all, do you get flashbacks to Call of Duty?
Yes, I do.
Like PTSD going from back to the Call of Duty.
You know what we were really good at was search and destroy. That was bread and butter. We were in the top 2% in the world at that.
No kidding.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we were stupid good at that. Oh. we were that was all we did. That was literally the only game we played. I think it was before I had kids. I'd work. My wife was still working evenings at that point with a hairdresser career, and my buddy's wife had her own hobbies. So we were like, "This is great. We'll just play video games every night."
Yeah.
My games go back to Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. So that's the extent of my game.
I'm still. My uncle lives next door to me here, and when he first met my aunt, was when we got an Atari, the 8200, I think. Yeah. And he would come over. It seemed like every night. And he and my father would hog the Atari and play Space Invaders together. And I still hold it against him. Every time we're together, I make sure to mention it.
How our worlds have changed.
Yeah.
I tell you what, every summer, the family, we do something up at Lake Winnipesaukee for a long weekend. And that's one of my favorite parts about the trip is taking my two young boys who are 12 and 8 and going up to Fun Spot and the old classic arcade upstairs. And my wife.
Fun Spot. Yeah, that's going back to college days for me.
And she gets so bored, but I'm like, I'm gonna go drop $10 in quarters just on the old classic arcade.
Right,
you got it.
And I love it. It's my highlight of my summer trip every year for doing something just different. That's my go out of the way to make that happen because I love all those classic games.
Well, that goes the way back meter for me. I spent 2 years on Weirs Beach when I went to college over in Laconia, so there was some fond memories and maybe a little hell raising back in those days too. So some good parts of the life. Well, brother, we can't thank you enough. And again, I apologize. The tail end of a cold for me and probably not the best recording tonight. But, the reality is, as you said, we've all got a piece of the pie out there. And Andy and I are fledglings in this. We said, what the heck, let's try it. And for me, getting people involved just to stay in the outdoors and get away from the gaming, to get back into understanding what conservation's about. And I said, you know what, if I'm going to start with, the podcasting idea and building our YouTube channel as well, it's not going to be just one topic. I want to cover all gamuts, get people from all types of different walks of life in the outdoor world. So we can't thank you for joining us. And obviously, many different topics that come down the road. I have no doubt we'll probably have you on again. And it's always great to have somebody that can keep the ear of the listener going. And that's what we want, is to have information out there. So how do people find you online?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on because this was awesome. It's always nice to be able to be a guest on this and not have to be the one that does all the setup and everything. So I appreciate just being able to be the passenger princess on this one. As far as where everybody can find me, primarily I'm on YouTube, so you can find me on my channel. It's youtube.com/@realnorthernbass. That is a reel like a fishing reel with 2 E's. I am very active on Instagram. That is also @realnorthernbass. Facebook as well. I got, hell, if you want to send me a friend request, by all means, go for it. Otherwise, you can just follow the Facebook page at Real Northern Bass. Pretty easy. Kind of in and out on TikTok. It's the same content as everywhere I post my, reels on Instagram and Facebook, and then the shorts on, YouTube. It's all the same. I don't curate unique content for every single different platform. I don't have enough time for that, which is why TikTok's kind of fallen by the wayside. But I might come back this year if I'm really going to make a go with this. So you can follow me there as well. But yeah, that's where you can find me. It's really YouTube and Instagram are the main players, and Facebook very close behind that. And TikTok is, it's kind of hanging out in the rear.
And before I forget, you also just wrote one of your first articles. You're in On the Water magazine as well. So there's all kinds of different avenues and things you've gotten into too. So good for you.
Yeah, that was awesome. They had reached out and they were asking, hey, we're going to do this. We got the first thing coming out. We were already booked up, so we couldn't get you in it. But, for the next issue, we if you're interested, we'd love to have you write something. And I was like, all right, cool. And that was the end of that. And I had written that article for my own website. I had a website for a very short period, and I couldn't keep up with it. So I ended up shutting it down, but I still had this article, and I'm like, I just shot it over. I'm like, what do you think about this? They're like, that's a lot. We'll let you know. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I mean, I could pare it down, but whatever. And then they came back like, you know what? We all love it. We're going to run with it. Cool.
Very cool.
And that was the end of it. Like I thought that was like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know they were really going to put it. Like I had done a small article for them for the website, and then this opportunity came up, and I took a shot. And they rolled with it, and then next thing I know, they're like sending me proofs for where it's going to be posted, how it's going to be posted in the magazine. They're like, we need this so we can send you a check. I'm like, whoa. All right. Very unexpected, but very, very happy to do it. I love writing, which I'm sure is going to come as a shock with how little talking I do. I loved writing for the little bit I did for my own website, writing articles for a few other websites. So to have that opportunity to write something and, the potential of it being in a magazine, then ultimately landing in it was probably one of my proudest moments for everything I've done with this so far.
Cool. Good for you, man. That's what it's all about. And sky's the limit. Keep on keeping on. Look forward to seeing new episodes and maybe one day joining you on a boat. So don't ever hesitate. Give me a call when you're going to be up here.
Well, wait, when are you coming back from Ontario? I'll be up on Champlain May 14th to the 18th. You want to jump in with me for a day? Come on in.
Pick up the phone. I'll be there. I think I'm going to take a few days off to turkey hunt, but I'm come home from Ontario on the 29th of April. We start turkey hunting May 1st.
You'll be fine. You'll tag out before the 14th.
Well, I know Junior will. He always does. But, yeah, I think my first charter on Champlain is the 6th. Actually, I know it is. I've got a double with Captain Dave, so... man, it's going to be Skybusters after that. So we'll be around. Look forward to catching
both then. So make sure I know what the water temperatures are looking like, because I'm fingers crossed that dock bite down in Keeler for big glides goes off like it did 2 years ago, because that's all I'm thinking about for this trip.
Sure. I hear you, man. Look forward to seeing you. Good luck, safe travels, and stay in touch.
Yep. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you. Well, folks, thanks again for tuning in. As we said, lots of fishing topic stuff coming down the pipe, and stay tuned for some new projects Andy and I have coming too, and might be some interesting things coming. We've got some ideas to get people involved as well. But thank you so much for listening to New England Outdoor Life Podcast.
Hey there, thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to head over to newenglandoutdoorlife.com to sign up for our mailing list. And while you're at it, check out thirdalarmcharters.com. That's third with the number 3. Have a great week, and we'll see you outdoors.